Some months ago, this soldier took part in the old Army game of filling out a form. This time, however, he didn't mind so much because it was a questionnaire designed to give the authorities some help in providing for his mental and physical welfare. On the last page, he found a space in which he was asked to write any information he wished to bring to the attention of his officers, or to ask any questions that had not been answered for him through more ordinary channels. He asked a question. And thousands of other men, stationed in Burma and India, asked the same question, which in this picture is answered personally by the commanding general of IBT, General Dan I. Sultan.
I'm quite aware that when you came to the movies this evening, it was not because you wanted to look at me on the screen. This is, nevertheless, the only way that I can talk to all of you. So if you can grit your teeth and stand it for a few minutes, I should appreciate it. More than half the Americans, in the answer to the questionnaire, stated that they did not understand why American troops should be stationed in India and Burma. They did not know why they were here, and they said so, emphatically. Some of them used words that, well, let's say they were emphatic, and let it go at that. Now, this lack of knowledge on the part of the troops is not surprising in a theater as vast as this. The very geography of the area sometimes makes it almost impossible for us to see the end result of what we have been doing. What's more, the recent recall of General Stilwell and the splitting of CBI into two separate theaters may well have added to the confusion in the GI's point of view. And yet the answer is as simple as beans. The reason we sweat it out in Burma and India is that this is one way of getting at Japan. It's a long way and a hard way. And to understand why we take it, you must understand a few facts about the country to which most of it lies, China.
China has been fighting the Japs since 1937. Manchuria had already been occupied without Chinese resistance. Now Japan began to seize China's ports, walling her off from the outside world. The isolation of China was completed. Then Japan set out to chop its victim in two. To stay in the fight, China had to have help from us, her allies. But her ports were gone, sealed off by Japan, and the only way we could supply the munitions and other help so sorely needed was to break down the wall, reopen the Burma Road, and deliver our merchandise via the back door. This done, we could help build up a portion of the Chinese army to a point where it would be effective in engaging the big Jap force which now holds a large part of China, as well as assisting in the liberation of her ports. You must remember that China has been fighting practically without any air support at all. She lost all but a part of her artillery early in the war. She has virtually no anti-aircraft guns, no trucks to speak of, no ambulances, very few doctors, no organized supply, and scanty rations. The terrible shortage of goods of all kinds has inflated the currency and greatly aggravated her troubles. Japan, on the other hand, is well supplied in all the ways that China is not. And the Japs have taken every advantage they could of their military superiority. They've tried their best to knock off what they considered a setup. The surprising thing is that in spite of China's starved condition, the Japs have not been able to knock her out of the war. She's still in there, even though the Japs have been giving her a terrific beating. Whether China has fought effectively or not is beside the point. The point is that all these Jap soldiers, dozens of crack divisions, would have been thrown against General MacArthur and Admiral Nimitz in the Pacific, but for the fact that the Chinese army has stayed in the fight. With or without shoes, they've stayed. China's great manpower is one of the reasons they've been able to stick it out. Another reason is that they make good soldiers. They proved it in North Burma, where they had American training and equipment. It's to our own material interest, therefore, to help equip this vast reservoir of Chinese manpower so that they can still make a major contribution toward the defeat of Japan.
That was our mission before CBI was divided into two theaters, and it is still our mission. As you can figure for yourselves, it is not based on sentiment, but on the simple policy of placing guns in the hands of men in order that they may kill our common enemy. Well, the Japanese realized that we would help China, and surprising almost no one, they preferred to fight Chinese who had no guns. Since Shanghai and the Marco Polo Bridge, they had discovered that it takes a lot of Jap troops to hold China down, even when the Chinese army was virtually without arms. Consequently, the Jap took the logical step of completely isolating China from outside aid. That was the Burma campaign of 1942.
From their bases in Thailand and Malaya, they attacked at Mul Mine and Rangoon. They pushed up the Irrawaddy and Sitong valleys, outflanked the Chinese in the Shan states, drove the British and remnants of the Chinese to India. That left all of Burma in Japanese hands. With what they could salvage of other Chinese troops, the Americans had gone to India too. India may not look good to you, but it looked awfully good to all these fellows who walked 150 miles over the Naga Hills to get there.
The licking we took in Burma made our prospects of equipping the Chinese soldier and continuing the fight look pretty hopeless. But if we couldn't take the weapons to the men, perhaps we could take the men to the weapons.
So during the summer of 1942, a handful of ATC planes, operating without any of the modern direction-finding gadgets now plentiful in the theater, flew 13,000 Chinese from Kunming to Dinjan and Chapua. These troops were flown in transport planes at altitudes well above their service ceilings, through the worst kind of monsoon weather, without rest or replacement for pilots and crews, to and from inadequate fields, over some of the worst terrain in the world. And the entire 13,000 were landed in India without a single casualty. Many experts believe that will go down in history as one of the great air accomplishments of this war. More troops were brought in later. A training center was set up in India, and the Chinese 38th and 22nd divisions were reconstituted.